Hello friends, welcome back to csap.net online training video series. Today we are going to discuss most frequently asked top 12 interview questions and answers related to interface. This is part 2. In part 1, that is in our previous video, we discussed the concept interface. What is interface? How to create interface? What are the things we can do with interface? What are the things we cannot do with interface? What are the member we can define inside an interface? What are the member we cannot define an interface, right? How to implement the interface under the child classes, right? All these things we have discussed in our previous video, and this is part 2. In this video we are going to discuss these 12 interview questions and answer. In our next video I'm going to discuss the real time use cases of interface, right? I will give you some example, and we will discuss exactly how we will decide whether we need to use interface or not. Suppose one scenario is there, and in that particular scenario whether we need to go for interface or not, and if we are implementing interface, then what is the benefit or what are the advantages we'll get. That is we are going to discuss in our next session, right? Today let's start the discussion with what is an interface, right? What is an interface? The interface is a fully unimplemented class used for declaring set of methods of an object. So we can define an interface as a pure abstract method, pure abstract class, which allows us to define only abstract method. The abstract method means the method without body or without implementation. If you take the example, so this is nothing but your interface. So this is nothing but your interface. Inside interface, you can only declare method without body. It is not possible to declare method with implementation. Let me try to provide a body to one method, and as soon as I provide implementation, then we will get some error. What error we are getting? Interface member cannot have a definition. Definition means you cannot provide a body to the interface method. This is not possible. What is possible? Method without body. So method without body means this is, see, here we are writing void add, but internally it is going to be a public abstract method. That means what? Now it means inside interface you can only declare abstract method. As you are not allowed to declare any non-abstract method, so we can say it is a pure abstract class. Pure abstract class means within this interface you can only declare abstract method. It is not allowing us to declare any non-abstract method, so we can say interface is a pure abstract class which contains only abstract method. Abstract method means method without implementation, right? What is the use of interface? It is used to achieve multiple inheritance which cannot be achieved by using classes, right? What is multiple inheritance? That we'll discuss in our upcoming session. But one of the way to implement multiple inheritance, not one of the way, it is the only preferred way. Using interface only we can implement multiple inheritance. Using class we cannot implement multiple inheritance. Its implementation must be provided by the class or struct. Suppose you declared one interface, then the class or struct which implement the interface will take the responsibility to provide its implementation. So you can see here I am declaring one interface, and this interface having two abstract member, two interface member, right? And these two are nothing but your abstract member. The class which implement this interface, in this case this is the class which implement this interface, will take the responsibility to provide implementation to the abstract member that we created inside the interface. Here we are creating add and sub, and you can see we are providing implementation to this add and sub method. And if you are not providing implementation, then you will get some compilation error. What error saying? It is saying this implementation class doesn't provide implementation for this interface one dot add method and interface one dot sub method, right? Now if you provide implementation to one method and if you don't provide implementation to the sub method, then also you are going to get the compilation error. But in this case it will not give you any error for the add method, it will give you error for the sub method. You can see this implementation class doesn't provide implementation for the interface method, interface one dot sub, right? So child class will take the responsibility to provide implementation to all the abstract members that are defined inside your interface. Now, what are the different ways, or what are the different types of inheritance supported in C#, right? So different types of inheritance means a class in how many ways implement another class or another interface, right? So you can see a class can be inherited either from one class or from an interface. So whenever you are creating a class, whenever you are making the inheritance relationship, the parent class might be a class or might be an interface. So inheritance are divided into two types: implementation inheritance and interface inheritance, right? If a class is inherited from another class, then we can say it is an implementation inheritance. And if a class is inherited from an interface, then we can say it is an interface inheritance, right? If a class is inheriting from another class, we call it implementation inheritance. And the main concept of implementation inheritance is child classes can consume the member of their parent class. Whatever member you define inside your parent class, all those members are going to be consumed by the child classes, right? All those member means except the private member. Private member are not inherited to the child classes, right? On the other hand, if a class is inheriting from an interface, we call it interface inheritance. But interface inheritance doesn't provide any reusability, because here we are not consuming the member of the parent under the child. The child is only implementing the parent's member, right? In the case of interference inheritance, in this case we are not reusing the parent member under the child, right? Child is not going to consume any member of the parent, because in parent interface we are not providing implementation to the method, right? What the child will do, child will take the responsibility to implement all the abstract member that are defined inside the parent interface, right? For example, this is your interface and this is your child class. The child class implementing the interface, that is nothing but interface inheritance. In this case, the child class not consuming any member defined inside the interface, right? Rather, this child class take the responsibility to provide implementation to the interface member, right? Whatever abstract method you have defined inside your interface, those are going to be implemented by the child class. This is interface implementation. Now coming to this example, you can see. So in this case, so this is one class. This class having add and sum. This is another class, and this class inheriting from another class. Whenever a class is inheriting from another class, this is called implementation inheritance, right? In this case, using child class object, you can conjugate this member, you can consume this two member which is defined inside this child class. Even though you can consume this member, you can also consume this two member which is defined inside the parent class. Now the child class consuming the member of the parent class. This is the advantages of implementation inheritance. And in interface inheritance, the child class not consuming any member of the parent, rather the child class the child class implementing the member of the parent, providing implementation, providing body to the member what you have defined inside your interface, right? Then the question is, why do we need an interface in C#, right? So see, so there is a concept called multiple inheritance, where one class is derived from more than one classes, right? That means one base class, and that means one child class having more than one parent class. But this concept is not possible in C# with classes. See, this class B, class C, class A inheriting from B and C. This concept is not possible, right? This concept is not possible in C#. But this concept is not supported in .NET with classes. But since a large number of real-time applications require to use multiple inheritance, but this is one of the important concepts. Anyhow, we need to inherit our class from multiple types, right? Then we need to support this functionality. We need to support this behavior at any cost in our programming language. To support this behavior, to support multiple inheritance, interface are introduced, right? You cannot inherit from more than one classes, but you can inherit from more than one interfaces, right? To support multiple inheritance, interface concept are introduced. See, this is one class. This is class B. You cannot inherit this class C from A and B. You will get this error. That is, cannot have a multiple base classes, right? But in this case, instead of making this class, so what I can do, I can make this as interface. I can make this as interface. Now you will see there is no error. That means now your class implementing two types, right? So it is one type and it is type. So this is how you can achieve multiple inheritance in C#. We'll discuss this concept in detail in our coming session, right? Now, can I use public access specifier for the interface methods in C#? No, you cannot use public access specifier for interface method, right? For example, if you try to declare this method as public, then you will get an error. Why? What error? Please see there, the modifier public is not valid for this item. Why it is not allowing any access specifier to the interface member? The reason is by default this member is going to be public only. It is not only public, it is also abstract. Even you cannot make this as a public abstract, right? This is also not valid. So you cannot use public and you cannot use abstract. You can see these two error messages. The reason is by default it is going to public and abstract. And if you are using public and abstract again, so it is like public, abstract, abstract. Doesn't make any sense, right? And if it is allow you to use any access specifier, then even you can also use other access specifier like private, right? The other access specifier like static, right? Sorry, other modifier like static. So these are not allowed, right? Private, static, these are not allowed. So by default, they are going to be public and static. No other modifier you can use with the interface member, right? Can I use interface? Can an interface implement an abstract class? No, this is not possible. Interface cannot implement an abstract class. See, this is abstract class and this is my interface. And whenever I'm trying to make the inheritance relationship, you can see I'm getting some kind of compilation error. What is the error? The class abstract in interface list is not an interface. What he is trying to say is that an interface can inherit from another interface only. You cannot inherit your interface from an abstract class. Why? Because interface is going to be stored only abstract method. But inside your abstract class, you might be have declared some method with implementation, suppose void m1, and you can provide implementation. This is acceptable, but this thing you cannot store inside your interface method. Right? Inside interface, you cannot store any method with implementation. This is the reason why interface cannot have any abstract class as the superclass. But if you want, you can implement your interface can inherit from another interface. See here, A is interface, B is interface. You can write A, that is acceptable. You can write B, that is also acceptable. You can your class can inherit from more than one interfaces, that is also acceptable. Interface can inherit from other interfaces. No issue, but interface cannot inherit from abstract class. Why? Because there is a chance in the abstract class you might be defined some method with the implementation, and those method you cannot inherit to your interface because interface are not going to hold any method with the implementation. Can an interface be declared as sealed? No, you cannot declare an interface as sealed. Why? Sealed saying that your class is final and this class cannot be inherited to the child class. A child class cannot inherit your class, right? If you are making sealed means it is a final class. But as what? Why we are creating interface? Because we want child class, right? We want inheritance relationship. Interface means inheritance. Sealed class means no inheritance, right? As both are contracting with each other, so you cannot declare an interface with sealed. And furthermore, interface you are only declaring method. You are not providing implementation. And if this class is final one, if no class can inherit from this class, then who is going to provide the implementation for the abstract method, right? So this is the reason why interface, whenever you are creating an interface, you cannot mark that interface as sealed, right? Is more than one interface allowed to implement a class in C#? Yes, this is possible. You can see this is interface 1 and this is interface 2, and a class can implement in two interfaces, interface 1 and interface 2. Actually, this is how we implement multiple inheritance in C#. In this case, this interface having one method, and in this case, this interface having another method. And these two methods are implemented by this class. Even though you can define method 1 inside interface 2, even you can define method 2 inside this interface, right? So that is also possible, and in this case this is also going to be compiled, right? Why? How? We'll discuss in our multiple inheritance article. We'll discuss that in multiple inheritance video session, right? Whenever we are going to discuss multiple inheritance, at that time we'll discuss why it is and how it is. Is it necessary to implement all interface method in C#? Not exactly. So you can say yes or no, right? Why I'm saying yes or no? See, if you are creating the class as abstract, then it is not mandatory to implement all the interface, right? But if you are creating your class as a non-abstract class, then it is mandatory to implement all of the interface member. Okay, so let's see this practically. So in this case, you can see this is my interface. In this case, it is mandatory. it is mandatory to provide implementation to all the interface member. If I provide any comment, if I comment this, we will get some kind of a compilation error because this is a non-abstract class. But what I'm doing, what I'm going to do next, I'm creating one abstract class, public abstract implementation, some abstract class, right? Inheriting from this. And in this case, what I'm trying to do, I'm commenting this. So if I'm commenting this, then I need to tell that this method, which method implemented add method, which method not implemented saw method. Then I need to tell this explicitly that saw method is not implemented, sort method is as it is abstract in this class also. So I need to tell this explicitly. So in this case, you will see that you will not get any error. Why I need to mention this public and abstract explicitly? Because this is not interface definition. This is an abstract class. And we know already in abstract class, you need to explicitly specify public abstract. But in interface, we are not explicitly specifying. This is the reason why we need to make this public and abstract. So it is so the answer to this question is it necessary to implement all the interface member? It's depend basically on your requirement. If your class, if it's a non-static class, a non-abstract class, then yes, it is mandatory to provide implementation. Yeah, and if it is just abstract class, then it is not necessary. If you want, you can provide implementation to some of the method, and you can keep rest of the method as abstract as it is. Right? How interface is different from a class? See, we have discussed interface and we have discussed classes, right? What is the difference between them? First difference, we cannot instantiate an interface. You cannot create an instance of the interface. In this case, this is interface and this is class, right? You cannot instantiate interface. Interface obj equals to new. This is not possible. Instantiation is not possible, right? So this is your class. You can create an instance of the class, that is possible, but you cannot create an instance of an interface. This is not possible. So interface instantiation is not possible. This is the difference. So you can create an instance of a class, but you cannot create an instance of an interface, right? This is the difference. Second, an interface does not contain any constructor or data field or destructor, etc. If you come to this part, so inside this, you cannot declare any variable. Variable declaration is restricted. Inside this, you cannot declare any constructor. So the constructor declaration is restricted. Even inside this, the destructor declaration is also restricted, right? So this is not possible, right? This is not possible. But all these things you can do inside a class. So inside a class, you can declare variable, you can declare constructor, and you can declare also destructor. This is all possible, right? This is possible. Inside this, you can declare variable, constructor, destructor, properties, everything inside a class you can declare. All of the method of an interface are abstract and public by default. By default, whenever you created a interface member, right? So by default, whenever you create an interface member, then by default, they are going to be public and abstract. But they are not going to be public and abstract by default inside a class. You need to mention whether it is a public or private. Whatever you are providing, that is going to be applicable, right? If you are making this public, then it is public. If you are making this private, then it is going to be private. That is what you need to understand. An interface is not extended by a class, it is implemented by a class, right? So in this case, you can see this is a class, it is not extending this interface, right? This implementation class not consuming any member of this class. This interface, this class implementing the member what are defined inside your interface, right? An interface can extend multiple interfaces, right? In this case, if you are creating one interface, right? So you can see this is one interface and it is inheriting from multiple interfaces, interface A, interface B. So these are the difference between interface and class. Now, what are the similarities between interface and abstract class, and what are the difference between interface and abstract class? This is the most frequently asked interview question. Let us first discuss the similarities. The first similarity is both interface and abstract class. You cannot create an instance because instantiation is not possible. You cannot create an object. But for both interface and abstract, you can create a reference variable, right? For example, in this example, you cannot create an instance of this interface, but you can create a reference variable, right? Let me creating this in obj equals to, I'm creating an instance of this class, and here you can see the reference variable is of interface type. This is possible, right? And the same thing you can also do with the abstract class. The subclass would implement all the abstract methods, right? For example, what it means, now it means if you are creating one interface, then the child class of the interface is going to provide implementation to all the abstract method. This is same for interface and same for abstract class, right? So this is one abstract class, and the child class who is going to implement this abstract class, he should provide implementation to this abstract method. Both cannot be declared as cell. Already we discussed. You cannot create the interface as cell, as well as you cannot create the abstract class as cell. What is the difference between interface and abstract class? This is the most frequently asked interview question. In almost all interviews, if you are attending as a fresher or as a experienced developer, you might face this question. Okay. The main difference that need to be answered in the interview as follows. The interface is a fully unimplemented class used for declaring set of methods of an object. Already we discussed. Inside a method, inside an interface, you can only declare abstract. Abstract method means method without body. You cannot declare method with body, right? So that means it is a fully unimplemented class. On the other hand, abstract class is a partially implemented class. Why partially implemented means? It is possible to provide implementation to some of the method, whereas rest of the method you can declare as abstract, right? Right. So the implemented methods are common for all next level subclasses. The remaining methods which are declared as abstract needs to be implemented by the child classes, right? The interface allows us to develop multiple inheritance. If you want to achieve multiple inheritance, then you need to use interface. Using classes or abstract classes, multiple inheritance is not possible. So we must start our object design with interface, whereas abstract classes doesn't support multiple inheritance. So it always comes next to interface. So your application design should start with interface, then abstract classes, then concrete classes, right? So apart from this, there are a few more differences. Let us understand this. It is a partially implemented class. It allows us to define both concrete and abstract method. Coming to interface, it is a fully unimplemented class. It is allows only us to define only abstract method. Second point, it should be declared by using the abstract keyword. Abstract method should also contain the abstract keyword, right? If you are creating an abstract method, you have to use abstract keyword. If you are creating an abstract class, again you have to use the abstract keyword. Coming to interface, it is created by using the keyword interface. And by default, all the members of an interface are abstract and public. So we do not need to write abstract and public explicitly. By default, they are going to be abstract only, right? Its members, so inside an abstract class, members default accessibility modifier is private and it can be changed to any other accessibility modifier, right? For example, this is an abstract class. In this abstract class, if I'm declaring one method called void m1, then if I'm not providing the access specifier, then by default it is going to be private, right? By default it is going to be private. So by default the interface the abstract class member are private, but coming to interface, by default they are going to be public only, right? This is the point that you need to remember. Its default accessibility modifier is private and can be changed to any other, right? You can declare private, public, protected, anything you want, you can declare inside an interface, right? Sorry, inside an abstract class. So here I can make this as public also, right? I can make this as protected also. So all these access specifiers are applicable to abstract class. But inside the interface, you cannot use any access specifier explicitly. By default, all the members are going to be public only, right? See, it is not possible. Its member default accessibility modifier is public and cannot be changed. It is possible to declare data field inside an abstract class. Data field means inside an abstract class, you can declare some variables like integer. x equals to 10. This is possible, but this is not possible inside interface. See, I'm trying to write some variable integer x. We'll get some compilation error. What? Now fields are not allowed. Interface cannot contain fields, right? An abstract class can contain a non-abstract function. Inside abstract class, you can define a non-abstract function, write method with implementation, but with the interface, you cannot declare a method with body, right? An abstract class can inherit from another abstract class an interface, but an interface can inherit from other interfaces, but cannot inherit from other abstract classes. See, in this case, so coming to make you understand this thing, what I'm saying, this is an abstract class. This abstract class can inherit from interface as well as if you have another abstract class. Let me create another abstract class, public, right? Abstract class CLS11. So I'm creating this abstract class as CLS11, and I can inherit this from like this also. That means your abstract class can inherit from another abstract class or from interfaces also, right? But interface cannot inherit, but interface, so this is your interface, right? The interface can inherit from other interfaces, interface A, interface B, but your interface cannot inherit from abstract classes. This is not possible. We already discussed why. Now, because in this case, this class having some non-abstract method, but as per interface definition, it can contain only abstract method, right? This is the reason why it is not possible. An abstract class cannot be used to implement multiple inheritance, right? So in this case, if you look at this abstract class, right, this class, so this class can inherit from a single class only. But if you look at this interface, it can inherit from multiple classes, multiple interfaces, right? As it is inheriting from multiple inheritances, so inheritance is possible, right? In this case, see, this is one class, class C. And if you try to see, this is class, abstract class, class C, and you are just inheriting from class C, that is fine. But if you try to inherit from another class, right? As soon as I'm trying to create a different class, right? Class, so suppose this is CLS13, and I'm trying to inherit this class from two different classes, I'll get compilation error. What error? NAS cannot have a multiple base classes. That multiple, if you do not have multiple base classes, that means multiple inheritance is not supported or not possible with classes. Abstract class member can have access specifier, right? You can write public, private, protected, anything to the abstract member, but this is not possible with interface. Interface members are by default public only. What are the advantages of using an interface in C# application? Means these three. It is used to achieve loosely coupling. What is loose coupling? What is tight coupling? We'll discuss. We'll discuss as we progress in this video series. It is used to achieve total abstraction. Total abstraction means if you are using interface, you will achieve 100% abstraction, right? So 100% abstraction, how we are achieving? Right. See, in this case, if we are providing this interface to the user of our class, then the user of our class will come to know this method signature. But how this method is implemented, the user will never know. And as this interface can contain only abstract method, means there is no chance of providing implementation, providing a method with implementation. That means we will get 100% abstraction, right? To achieve multiple inheritance and abstraction. So using interface, we can also achieve multiple inheritance. And we have already discussed in our abstraction session or abstraction video that we can achieve abstraction in two ways, by using abstract classes and by using inheritance, right? So you can achieve multiple inheritance with interface, and by using interface, we can also achieve abstraction. That's it for today. In our next video, we are going to discuss some real-time scenarios of using interface. That is, I will take some example, then I will decide how to design your application using interface. Thank you. Thank you for watching this session. In case you need the text version of this video, then the link for the same is provided in the video description.